This week is the end of February, and I've been doing a podcast a day for 28 days as part of a Keys to Success series. And so through that, I've been noticing that a lot of people are wanting to start podcasts and kind of asking me, like, how do I do it? How do I get started? And so I think I'm going to do a video one day about the equipment I use, but I think the main point and the main meat of anything with public speaking is just having a blueprint, having an idea, knowing how to speak, and that's what I want to do this week with you guys. And so I kind of want to go down and give you my tips and what I do when I prepare to speak, whether it be for a podcast, whether it even a YouTube video, and even a public speaking in person. And so what I begin with is you have to have a main idea. What is your point? Go somewhere, go to a room, go by yourself and say, what do I want to get across? What do I want to say? And then write down that statement and stick to that. When we talk about being a Christian, I just want to leave you with this. It's about focusing on Christ and not focusing on sin. When we look to Christ and we see Christ leading our lives and we see how Christ is directing us, then we'll be able to survive and see where he wants us to go. When we focus on sin, we can fall into the trap of going into sin and thinking sin is our master. And then from there, what you want to do is you kind of want to form it into a question. So if my statement, if I want to talk about entrepreneurship, that in itself is very broad. You can go for a long time about it. But the question you want to ask yourself is, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? Or is it exciting to be an entrepreneur? Are the keys to being an entrepreneur? Those are different things that kind of narrow down what you want to talk about. And normally in the form of a question is the best thing that you can do. And so from there, I do some more work where I'm writing down ideas and I'm answering some main questions, okay? And the main questions that I'm answering is, what does it mean? So I got my statement, what does that statement mean? What does it mean to be an entrepreneur? Okay, I write that down and get some ideas from there. From there, do they buy it? Meaning when you tell somebody this, are they engaged? Do they really believe you? Do they believe what you're saying? Do you have something to draw them in to really make them think that, okay, he's telling the truth, or I want to listen to him? And then next, what you want to do is kind of like a so what question. Like, so what? What's the value in it? There has to be a so what, or else people aren't going to care what you're talking about. And then from the so what, you can go into who cares? Why should we care? Meaning, does it have any value or any change to my life? And take your time and write those questions out and answer those questions in that order. And that will kind of help you get ideas and draw how you're going to say what you're going to say. Now, before I get into the tips about the 4 moves of a talk, right? There's 4 different main groups of a talk and how it progresses from beginning to end. And before I get into that, I always want to say that I start out 99% of the time with a story. Those of you guys who see my podcast understand that I'm always telling a story. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First, especially in public, people are nervous. You get up there, you start seeing all the people, and you get really nervous, even if you're prepared. And so you start talking and you start trying to remember your notes, or you're just reading your notes, you're not making eye contact, and all those things kind of feel funny to you. But if you tell a story, and if you tell it in such a way that you really own it, you don't have to memorize that because it's your own personal story. It's something that you know about, and it kind of calms you down and sets your pace. And so I recently was able to speak to a bunch of high schoolers and junior high schoolers at the local private Christian high school. And so I shared an interesting story about myself to start off the message. One day, one of my friends was driving, and for some reason he saw like this group of cars that were like traveling in a pack, right? Like a train or almost, was what he called it. And he was so excited, he said, Rodney, he said, we got to do that, right? We got to go and we got to try to create the same thing. And I'm like, how can we do that? He said, let's just go and, me and you will stop at a stoplight and then we'll go really slow. And so in my head, I'm thinking, this is kind of dumb. This doesn't sound like a good idea. And so, of course, I looked at him and I said, let's do it, right? So we're driving, and I remember driving down Texas Street. And I remember I was going about 25, right? And he looks over at me and he says, slower. So I go down to about 20. And we're going, and we're like kind of building traffic behind us now, right? We're kind of creating the scene. And he looks over at me, you know what he says? Slower, okay? And so I'm like, okay. And so I go down to about 15. And then, believe it or not, he looks over at me and says, slower. And so finally, I'm like riding the brake. That's pretty hard to do, right? I'm like riding the brake down Texas Street, and there's this big, huge traffic jam that we're creating. And so I was kind of getting the feeling like maybe we shouldn't do this. And so I remember driving, he's next to me over here, and I remember looking at him over here, and in the corner of my eye, you know, there was an officer driving this direction. Actually, he was at a stoplight. And all I saw was his head do this. He looked over like that. And so when I saw him like have whiplash, right? When I saw him like almost break his neck, I kind of said in my head, you know what? I think he may try to come over and stop us and pull us over. So I told my friend, I said, you know, at the light, we're gonna go and I'm just gonna, you know, not create this traffic jam. And so we get to, well, we were almost at the stoplight, and I underestimated the power of police radio, right? And so this motorcycle cop comes and pulls up next to us, and he yells at us, pull over, right? So we pull over, and he gives us a lecture. He says, hey, you know what the speed limit is on this street? And I said, oh, probably what, 30? He said, 35, right? And he said, I said, oh, I'm sorry, officer. He said, do you have any idea how fast you were going? And I said, maybe 25. He said, try 5, you know? And so he gave us tickets for impeding traffic. I never heard that term before, impeding traffic, basically going too slow. When you begin to talk and when you have your message already prepared, there's 4 different things that you move from, okay? And one of those things, you can move to different areas of your talk, but the rest of the 3 normally follow a certain order, and I'll explain in a minute. But the first thing is you want to create a crisis. You want to create a situation to where you're kind of answering like that, so what? What value does it have? Why should I care? What's the crisis, right? If you have a topic, it's exciting to be an entrepreneur. Well, what's the crisis? The crisis is I'm in a job that I hate. So you start to talk off that way. You have a story about your entrepreneurship or maybe a job that you hated, and then you talk about, you know, we're all in a job that we hate. Don't you hate your job? If you're in a job that you love, you're lucky. But wouldn't you like the freedom? You know, see what you're doing there? You're kind of drawing them in and kind of getting them like, yeah, yeah, and you're keeping them going. And then from the crisis, you kind of talk about barriers, right? What's stopping you from doing this? Yeah, I already agree with you, but oh, yeah, that's true. You know, I'm kind of scared to quit my job. Or, you know what, that's true. I don't think I have what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And so they're identifying with you because now they agree with you, but they're also identifying barriers that are internal, and you're pointing those out to them, and they're like right with you, like saying, yeah, that's right, that's true. And then from there, 99% of the time, I talk about my statement and my central truth. So I start off with a crisis, start off with the barriers, and then I say, you know what? It pays to be an entrepreneur. And so you got them into like, you know, yeah, I hate my job. Yeah, and I agree. I don't really like know what it takes to be one, but yeah, it does pay. And you're telling me it pays. And then from there, what you do is you kind of give them some next steps. What is what you should do then? If you agree with me and you're following along with me, these are the steps you should take, and this is what you should do in order to change that. And usually there's like 3 or 4 keys that I normally point out for them to change. Now those 4 things kind of, you know, see how they flow? They kind of flow in order. That's what I do whenever I public speak anywhere and I give any message, podcasts, in person or anything, right? And the only thing that can be moved is the central truth, is your big statement, your main idea, because you can say it up front. You can say it up front, like it pays to be an entrepreneur, right? Because you hate your job and then you go into the crisis, you go into the barriers, and then you go into the next steps. Or you can put it at the end, kind of almost where I put it, where you kind of, you're talking, and then at the end you kind of put that truth before you tell them what to do next, right? And so you can play around with that and move it all along. But hopefully those tips will help you. Hopefully you'll be encouraged with that. And hopefully if you want to start a podcast, go ahead and reach out to me. I'll be happy to help you. I'll be happy to guide you along. If you want to know more tips about public speaking, I'll probably be doing more videos like this in the future. But I can tell you what, keep working on it. It gets easier. And the more you do, the easier it gets. And always remember, I want to encourage, inspire, and motivate all of you as we navigate this thing called life. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you guys in the next one. All right, so just finished up 28 days of my keys to success. And if you missed it, if you haven't heard it, go back on my podcast and the Rodney podcast. It's on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and check it out. Tell me what you think. And as usual, like I said, speaking, I've been doing it for years. I've been doing public speaking for years, and I'm still working on my craft. I'm still improving every day. There's still some times I get nervous. So I want to encourage you guys that if that's your avenue, if that's what you want to do, it helps in your business, it helps in entrepreneurship, it helps in life. So just hit me a line, let me know. Please subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.